Okay, this is another video. Even the left wingers are using the term culture war. It's not a culture war. It's women, in the case of cancel culture, women firing men, and the odd time a woman gets it. And as you see, the right wingers, they scapegoat, like the Marxist and communist. This is what men do, by the way. When they see the feminists beating up on them, they scapegoat another group of men or a mixed group, which is still men. And like I say, these guys are into the socialists, so they can't blame the Marxist and the socialist. So they use the PMC, they call it, which is the professional managerial class. That's their scapegoat for what's going on. Now let's listen to some of this.
Like, before leaving the topic, a point like we're making about this, about this part of the population, we're talking about professional managerial class, isn't that like, it's, I think sometimes so many people in sort of progressive-y, lefty spaces are so used to like a certain kind of like really dumb identity politics that they
but what identity politics are they? First of all, he's saying progressive lefties. These guys are on the left. So again, they have to try and separate themselves from these feminists. These guys embrace feminism. I've seen Ben Burgess here talk with Amberly Frost, who's a card-carrying feminist, and talks about the patriarchy. Hey, Ben, how does that conversation with Amberly Frost go when she talks about patriarchy and how you're a disgusting patriarch? Do you grovel towards her? Anyway, the point is the professional managerial class, the feminists go for high status positions. So, of course, this is how they're scapegoating. They're saying, oh, these people from the upper echelons don't know their place, or they're attacking us. And again, this is the identity politics. What's the identity? It's the feminist who are attacking the men.
That they sort of hear everything through that prism, or they're so used to making everything about individual moralizing that they hear everything through that prism.
But it's not really moralizing, is it? Saying that you're a scumbag because you were born with a penis is not moral. And they're not seeing it through a lens either. This is their agenda, to attack all these guys. All these guys. See all these white guys? That's what they're doing. They're attacking them because they're born male. So it's not moralizing.
And so you start saying, oh, there's this kind of liberalism that's like that really reflects the sort of worldview of professional managerial class, and what they hear is that you're moralistically attacking individuals for belonging to this part of the population, which is not at all the point. I mean, look, it's clearly not the point.
Well, that's how they do it, isn't it? It's that the feminist, they brought all the minorities on board as attack dogs. And even these guys are falling for it.
Talk about it because what do I do? I have a day job at a college, and I write shit, and I do media things. That's PMC if anything is.
We're in the PM. I'm in the PMC. Come on,
yeah.
So these guys are in the PMC, and they're blaming the PMC. So obviously, you guys should be doing something about it.
Forrest is aspiring PMC, but yeah,
we'll get there soon.
Eventual PMC.
Eventual PMC. Yeah. So it's like that's not the that's not the point at all. It's not about denouncing anybody for belonging to this. It's about thinking about the difference between a working class politics and PMC politics, and what kind of vision of the world we want to have, what kind of political organizing, we want to do.
Yeah, you want the working class. You guys want to up your status. You want supposedly other working class men to get by. But the PMC class is the feminist in it, attacking guys. Hey, how can you help the working class man when there's quotas for women that oust them? When women get preferential treatment in the workplace, they get chosen over men. So how are you going to help the working class man, gentlemen?
And that, to my mind, that's the point of bringing it up in the first place.
Well, the barriers to it are also really, really, I don't know. The barriers to it are never clear because the first Uber driver that or the Lyft driver, Uber driver, I don't remember, that existed in this part of upstate New York because it took us a really long time to get Uber and Lyft. You know what I mean? Up here. The first one was my film professor, like one of my film professors. And it was his second semester teaching because they had fired a professor for allegedly saying something racist or something. And they
So a woman got a man fired at his university, in other words. That's what happened. His professor is a male professor, isn't it? Isn't he?
They hired this guy. I mean, it was in the paper and everything, so I don't think he'd care if I said his name. Chris Nostrand, who is like a really good, he was an aspiring documentary filmmaker, but he was the first Uber driver, and they tried to put it as like this big story, because this is like literally just a college as a town, you know what I mean? Like New Paltz says. So they tried to put it as like this feel-good story, like college professor earns extra money by driving an Uber and picks up Kingston mayor.
It's like one of those things where you'll have these feel-good stories.
Yeah, this is a real good feel. This is a feel-good story. Guy gets fired at campus because he's a guy, and now he's stuck as an Uber driver. This is so funny.
It's like, little girl sells lemonade to raise money for her brain cancer treatments, community rallies.
Well, and it's not that, I mean, it's not that dramatic because, it's
not that dramatic. But
see what this guy, Ben Burgess, just did? He uses brain cancer for this girl so that he can downplay the fact that this guy got fired for no good reason. He got fired by the gender KKK, and he wants to downplay it. So he does. This is pathetic. How about the little girl sells lemonade so she can get herself a new bicycle? She's not going to say that because then he has to give, kudos to this poor guy who got shafted. This is how pathetic these guys are.
It's like, but the structure of the story is the same. That it's like you're describing something that shouldn't exist and like turning it into a feel good story. And yeah, I mean it's
yeah, you admitted it. So what was the point of bringing up that little girl and talking about cancer? We both know it. Why you did it.
Of course, I mean stuff like that happens all the time. I mean, this is like a lot of educated professions are becoming more and more proletarianized. You have people who are doing exactly that kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure you have tons of people who are, I mean, look, people in the same sort of trends that lead to, the Uberization of cab driving also lead to the Uberization of journalism and academia. People stringing together all kinds of freelance jobs with.
Well, what is it? Media and in education is feminist controlled now. So, I mean, that's something you should be talking about if you're for the working class guy, if you're for any guy.
With no health insurance and all that stuff. But I think, and also it's also worth saying, just on a larger Marxist point, that a lot of people who fall into this category of the population are also technically part of the working class. But the reason it's worth making this distinction is precisely because we care how people think of themselves, how they orient politically, how they try to organize. Because the more people think of themselves as professionals and subscribe to this kind of liberal worldview, the less useful they're going to be for any kind of potential class politics. Whereas the more they think, oh yeah, I'm being screwed over, I need to organize a union. The better.
Or cases where you're a guy and you're being canceled by some woman or a group of women, I mean, what's the point of being part of that? That should be your major complaint. That's my complaint. If you want to help guys out, you guys have to call out what's going on.
Better we all are.
They're going to try to manage the revolution when it inevitably comes.
Well, this is something that I talk about with what I assume is friend of the show, Daniel Bessner. But we talk about it a lot, like in our private lives. It was like when we're talking about like all the cancel culture stuff and why there is so much of it going on.
There you go. Now this is the main point. It's women firing men, and like I say, the odd woman that they don't like gets it once in a while. And why is it going on a lot? Well, because feminism has won. They have gotten positions of authority, and they are exercising their authority on men. They don't like men, so they get zapped. So let's see, are these guys going to say that? No.
In these kind of PMC circles, and it's because of what you're talking about, the proletarianization of the PMC is leading them to essentially basically throw like this temper tantrum, right? Because like
whoa, no, this is not a temper tantrum. Guys getting fired is not a temper tantrum. You know, little girls who fall down and kick and want to get something and throw a tantrum, they don't get it. These are people who are in authority, and they're saying we're going to sack this guy, and they do. So this is the male posturing that happens just as much on the left as the right. So I hope these guys don't think they're any different from these right wingers they go on about.
They were kind of told that they were going to be some of the victors in the game of capitalism, and they are increasingly realizing that they are not, especially in the industries where cancel culture is most virulent, academia and the news media.
There you are, academia and the news media. Those are feminist control. All you want, if you want any proof, you just go to if you've ever seen it, Sarah Everhart, where they're talking about putting a curfew on for men. If you haven't heard of that, it's happening at this time. And the news media are all on their side, the way they cover it. So these guys are complaining about it, but what do they say? Proletarianizing or something? Proletarianizing no, it's feminizing. The feminists have gone on board and they control it. They control these spaces. And these guys are in academia, or at least, I don't know about Forrest, but the other two are. And so they know it and they see it and they can't even say anything about it. This is how pathetic men are.
Like the media, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
Because it used to be these jobs were pretty you were a solid winner in the economy. Like you weren't going to be a bajillionaire, but you were like living a pretty decent life for not a huge amount of work. Here in Hollywood, if you were some writer for TV sitcoms in the 1980s, a unionized gig, paid well, you wrote not that much, and it was just like a sweet ass gig.
Well, something, speaking about unions, what good is a union if a woman can point at you and say, "Lich that cotton picker"? The unions can't protect these guys. I know men do need unions, but the fact that a union can't protect a guy, because every guy in that union says, "Oh, this woman pointed his finger at this guy has to go." Then union's useless for that man.
Get those syndication checks.
Oh my goodness, yeah. These days, that's increasingly now. It's like everything else. There's very, very big winners at the high end, and everyone else is just kind of chugging along, and precarious as hell. And I mean, not to.
Oh, by the way, this is a good point too, because this is why these guys are socialist anyway. It's no different than the guys who go on about the society collapsing or, shaking things up. It's all a shakeup. because they want to rise higher. Like the feminists are firing men from jobs. They don't care. What they care about is rising in pay and status, right? That's what they want. And they're, as he says, they're that's becoming harder and harder to do. So these guys want to shake up. And by the way, Marxism or capital or socialism, that you can go for socialism in society, a mixture of that and capitalism. There's never been a Marxist uprising in anywhere but third world countries. It's never going to happen here. And these guys are part of the reason, because they want to rise in the system. Like I said, the only reason they're going on about socialism really is because the capitalist system, they're looking at it and saying, oh, someone pulled up the ladder, I can't even climb. But they don't care about the average guy, because this feminism getting guys fired from their jobs. They don't give a shit.
To mention the news industry, which is just utterly collapsed, like even beyond what it was. Like, I remember when BuzzFeed was going to like save everything, and like that, there was that funny letter of that woman who was like, I dream every night about working for BuzzFeed, and I'm like angry at all the people who work there because it seems like the most amazing place to work. Like that's gone. That's gone.
All you got to do is make lists.
Right, but that's gone, and HuffPost fired 50 people a couple weeks ago. I mean, that
people, were they male people or female people? I'm curious.
That industry has collapsed, and all those people who are like very highly educated, worked very hard to achieve those degrees and that level of education, and said all the right things and did all the, are just increasingly finding themselves with a future that looks pretty bleak. That's why I always say, I get the left-wing critique against canceling student debt. I get it. But if you want to end the cancel culture, that's a good policy to that'll get you a long way. I mean,
yeah, but how are you going to do it when you guys can't even call it out? If you can't even say who's doing the canceling? Like, you talking about canceling student debt? What good would that be if you get kicked out of college because some woman didn't like your face as a man? How? Look at him laughing his ass off. Why is he laughing? Why do guys laugh? Jeez.
If you just wipe out student debt, you get all these PMC types. Yeah.
I mean, look, you can argue that it's like
PMC types. Yeah, these women who are firing guys from their positions. Someone gets fired from university, is it almost like 99% of the time it's a guy? Come on.
Bad that we emphasize canceling student debt over as opposed to you could argue that it should be a much lower item on the priority list compared to
no, I get it, yeah,
compared to things like universal daycare. That's something that we don't talk about very much, but we should.
Universal daycare. Now that only helps 50% of the population, the female half. So these women are firing guys, and all you can think about is groveling to them even further. Talk about pathetic.
But housing rights, whatever. But
totally.
That said, we should also cancel student debt. It's the right thing to do in itself, and also, as you say, I think that it's good to have something to bring a lot of these people on for this kind of this kind of program. I completely agree with that. But I mean, I think that it's something. It's I think that there is definitely this kind of collective psychosis, as a lot of these people, have these professions become much more economically precarious.
Professional psychosis? So these women are crazy now. No, it's not psychosis. I mean, guys get canceled, they get fired, they find themselves unemployed because of injustice. This is what you say. This isn't a psychosis. The the KKK isn't psychosis. It's just hatred of other races. So the gender KKK is a hatred for you guys because you were born the way you were born. That's it.
And there, there are fewer. It's like the lyrics of working class heroes. There's spots at the top that you need to learn to smile as you kill. That like you have as you have fewer and fewer spots above you on the ladder, you get more vicious about it. Which I think is definitely ties into some of these recent canceling controversies, like the editor of Teen Vogue, who was like literally this was about like bad tweets from 10 years ago when she was a teenager. So she was 17 years old.
There you go. The odd girl gets it. And so what's he doing? He mentions this one girl that represents what? 1% of the canceling, firing. These people do it all the time. They're always trying to make things equal that aren't equal. There's no way they can be in this case.
When she tweeted these things out and abjectly apologized for it, many times, but it's something people can use against you in these kinds of games. So of course they will.
Yeah, I mean it's a temper tantrum driven by precarity, and I think that's his.
Again, if this woman was fired, then it's not a temper tantrum, is it? She lost out. These people have power.
That's as good as explanation as any I've heard, because I mean, what I find strange is the sort of the denial of it that exists in some circles of the left. I frankly just don't understand it because
talk about lack of self-awareness, denial. You guys are in complete denial of what's going on. That's why you talk about the PMC instead of the feminist infiltration of schools and media. Oh my God, how pathetic these groups are.
It's so evident. It's almost like it's just very, very evident. And it's true that the right wingers use it cynically, as they will with everything that happens in the world. Just like right wingers are successful when they cynically adopt left wing critiques of liberalism. That's like that's why Trump won in 2016 and that's why he lost in 2020, because he stopped doing that.
He's right about that, about the right wingers. That's true. I'll give him that.
It's just I just find the whole thing strange, and because on the one hand there's this denial that it exists, and then there's this other strain of like overemphasizing any criticism as harassment, and I think those two things are in tension. Like it's either one or the other, right? Like,
well, this is a really strange thing, because you get the exact same people who say, "Oh, cancel culture doesn't exist. You're just talking about criticism."
Right?
Canceling.
They're just suffering consequences, or like the pushback for that comes with being rude or mean or something.
Yeah. The feminists gaslight all the time. That's their modus operandi. I know I'm screwing it up, but I mean that's what they do. So you guys are getting a taste of it, and you're not liking it, and you have the right to say so, but why don't you say so? Why can't you call them out? This is a useless discussion because you guys can never call them out. Wow. No offense to this Forrest guy, but he's looking very bored. He doesn't look like he wants to be here.
Yeah, which by the way, there's already a huge tension there, because either it's just criticism or it's consequences, it's accountability. Because like being criticized isn't a consequence, it's not accountability. Like if you're actually just criticized, like somebody says you're wrong, your ideas are bad, like that's not much of a consequence. You're not being held accountable by being criticized. Like when people talk about accountability and consequences, it seems like they're implicitly admitting that they understand the difference between what human beings normally mean by criticizing and having like 2,000 strangers on Twitter, like, you know, yell at you and say that you're a piece of shit and a fascist and you should die. Like that's not really what criticizing normally means. It doesn't, like, criticizing doesn't really have the psychological effect on most human beings that has. But as you say, the same people who will say, oh, canceling is just criticism, people are just being babies about being criticized, will then say the second that somebody they don't like criticizes somebody they do like, especially especially if it then does lead to that kind of pile-on that people are pointing out when they talk about cancel culture, they'll say, oh, this is targeted harassment. So like I saw...
Yeah, the feminists and their attack dogs use double standards. No kidding. No kidding. And of course, the only reason you guys are complaining is that some of your guys are getting zapped. There was one with what's here, Ben Burgess and Butar. This guy named Saeed Butar. He was being attacked by hashtag me too, right? And then they were like, oh, it's different now. It's one of us, which makes you guys very hypocritical.
You know, one of these things play out this morning, you know, so I woke up this morning and I saw that Glenn Greenwald was trending again. It's like, oh shit, what happened now?
What did he do?
Yeah,
I was like kind of busy. What did he do?
Okay, so what he did, there's the story that came out in USA Today.
Just a minute. This is probably not important. I don't need to go any further because you can see this is the problem with these guys. Just like the right wingers, the left wingers here are getting zapped as well, and now they're pissed, and they're too cowardly to admit who's doing it to them and who the victims are. Once in a blue moon, a girl get it. And a famous one is, what's her name? The book writer there, J.K. Rowling. But that was a infight between feminists, between the radical feminist and the intersectional feminist. The intersectional feminists are strategic feminists. They understand. They want to keep their attack dogs ready to attack and keep the red herrings going, the smoke screen of racism and attacking trans or something like that. And the radical feminists have no strategy. They're like the white nationalist that just yells out, kill the kikes or gas the Jews. And so there's a fight between those two. That's why Rowling's got zapped. And so these guys, well, what can I say? They can't bother to call it out. And this guy is so glazed over, I don't think he cares about anything. But anyway, this is as far as we need to go with this. Hey, Ben Burgess, if I'm wrong, why don't you give me an argument?